Flight 2, go ahead.
It's a lady at 46.
911, what's your emergency?
According to the National Emergency Number Association, there are around 600,000 emergency phone calls made per day in the United States. For calls requiring medical assistance, there are over 21,000 licensed local emergency medical agencies throughout the country who respond to calls made within their designated areas. The emergency medical technicians, or EMTs, provide treatment to the injured and sick, as well as transportation to hospitals in cases of more severe medical situations. Those who become EMTs are faced with one of the most physically demanding lines of work, one that is filled with many challenges and risks. What inspires someone to become an EMT?
I started doing EMS in particular because it became a family thing. My dad retired from the military, got a job as an airline pilot. He found he had a lot of free time, and he's like, I want to do something with my free time. So he joined the rescue squad. I joined afterwards. Then my sisters joined, then my mom joined, and it's become a family thing.
I started off in the Navy 20 years ago. Became an aircrew rescue swimmer. For those of you who don't know what it means I jumped out of helicopters into the water to get people out of the water that couldn't keep their aircraft out of the water for whatever reason. During that training, we received basic, first aid, first responder type training. We did it. I really got really into it, found it very interesting, wanted to know more about it.
My inspiration for EMS in general was my mom, who started out the same way I have, just as a general crew member. After about 18 months, she went and took an EMT class, came home and was telling us stories about it, and I fell in love with it through stories.
I was drawn into the field by my family. It's the family business. I am 47 years old right now, and my father has been a member of the department here for 45 years.
With any line of work, being an EMT comes with its own set of risks.
It's a dangerous career field, not so much necessarily in terms of physical challenges, although those are certainly the case. You have repetitive strain, injury, long-term degradation of just your body from the strenuous work.
A 2019 study conducted by the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health found that EMTs were at a higher risk for on-the-job injuries than any other line of work. Roughly 9 out of every 100 EMTs surveyed said they had been treated for an injury sustained while working. All other lines of work surveyed averaged around 2 reports of treatment for on-the-job injuries for every 100 employees. The top causes for injuries that EMTs face included injuries caused by body motion, exposure to harmful substances and pathogens, slips and falls, as well as incidents involving motor vehicles.
OSHA says anything over 45 pounds is a two-man lift. How much does an average person weigh? 180, 200? You're talking a driver and a crew member. And maybe a PC. So maybe you might have 3 people if you're lucky. Usually it's just you and a driver, 2 people. You get that call at 3 o'clock in the morning, and it's a 400-pound patient that's stuck on the floor, and it's just you 2 to lift him. You're probably going to hurt something.
Even more alarming is that one of the major causes for injuries are those sustained through violence and assaults. A 2018 study conducted for the Pre-Hospital Disaster Medicine publication found that EMTs were 22 times more likely to be the victims of violence than any other occupation.
Unlike, say, police officers, people don't necessarily fear assaulting healthcare workers the same way as they would fear assaulting a law enforcement officer.
This same 2018 study found that 2 out of every 3, or 67%, of EMTs surveyed reported being assaulted while on the job.
When I was a teenager, I had braces. And after braces, you get your retainer. About 3 weeks after I got my retainer, I got punched in the mouth by a patient, and he broke my retainer in my mouth.
when we deal with people and patients, they're not always in the right mindset. Stress comes with an emergency response. Depending on who you're dealing with and what their specific reason for your emergency contact with them is, it can lead people to do things that they wouldn't normally do under different circumstances.
I also had a patient not much more recently who decided that he didn't want the fag to deal with him, and so he smacked my hands off of him and stormed out of the ambulance and pushed me out of the door.
The risks that EMTs face are not limited to injuries alone. Even those whose job it is to save lives comes with the risk of losing their own.
We're all first responders. First responder means you're first on scene. You're the first one there. Being the first one there, you don't always know what you're walking into. Unlike police officers, we don't have guns. We don't usually have bulletproof vests. If you don't feel that someplace is safe to go into, don't go into it.
The risk of an EMT losing their life while on duty is almost as likely as other first responder fields. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics showed that there were nearly 13 on-duty deaths per year for every 100,000 EMTs. Police deaths averaged around 14, while firefighters averaged around 16.
I think the overt risk of injury to police officers is probably pretty high, but I think what gets EMS a little bit more than some other fields is some of the hidden risks. Mental fatigue, risk of depression, some of the things that you've seen can be traumatic, and that can weigh on people and can, I've heard, never experienced it personally, but I've heard on the grapevine, and even not necessarily here, the risk of suicide and depression and burnout is pretty high in the EMS field.
A 2018 study by the National Association of EMS Physicians and State EMS Directors found that 5% of annual EMT deaths were the result of suicide. EMTs were at a higher level of acute and chronic stress, as well as high rates of depression and substance abuse, which increased their risk of suicide. While the risks to EMTs' lives are high, the majority in the field feel that they have been prepared for this challenge. The 2018 survey conducted for the Pre-Hospital Disaster Medicine publication found that 77% of EMTs felt the agencies they work for practice and instilled a culture of safety with employees.
As a former safety officer here at the squad, we definitely try to instill a culture of safety. Doing this line of work has its dangers. You're going into places where people are usually probably having a very bad day. People don't always handle that bad day very well.
The same survey found the majority of EMTs accepted that risks such as injuries, assaults, and even the loss of life were an unfortunate part of this line of work.
I do think that injuries are unfortunately something that we do have to accept in this line of work.
It is unfortunate that most people will have experience with being injured or being assaulted, and that because we know that's a thing, it is widely accepted.
A 2019 study conducted by the National Association of Emergency Medical Technicians found that 53% of EMTs believe they had received adequate training by the agencies they work for on how to handle violence while on call. In this same survey, 25% responded that they did not feel they had been properly trained to handle situations where violence may occur. These respondents felt that more training and education in verbal de-escalation, as well as hand-to-hand self-defense, was needed. Many EMTs called for stiffer punishments towards those who attacked EMS practitioners. In most states, violence against EMS is classified as a misdemeanor and is not criminally pursued on the same level as an assault on a police officer would be pursued.
I feel like there are ways that we could improve our safety standards. But as far as what we're trained to do in specific situations, I believe that it's the best it can be for now.
I think the EMS field is not a mature field in the same way, say, the nursing field is, in that EMS has not necessarily provided the resources that they need to do the job correctly. They're not provided the education they're needed to do the job correctly. No field is completely safe, 100% safe, and EMS is there's inherent risk in going to somebody's house that you don't know, or going into an environment where somebody was assaulted or attacked and is injured, and trying to help them.
We know that we are first responders, but that doesn't mean you have to go in there half-cocked. If you don't know what the whole situation is, find out, get that information, look to your friend next to you, look to the police officer on scene, use the resources that you have available to you.
Though there are many risks involved, the majority of EMTs believe that the good outweighs the bad. Like police officers and firefighters, medical emergency services are vital in the safety and protection of the communities they serve.
I have definitely enjoyed my time doing this, and there's a reason I keep coming back to do this, is because despite what I just said about many of the issues in EMS and many of the issues, especially with the career of EMS, I think it is incredibly rewarding work, and that's what keeps people coming back to do this.
A 2020 survey conducted by the National Association of Emergency Medical Technicians found that 79.4% of EMS workers were satisfied with their job.
When it's rewarding, it is absolutely rewarding, and you're seeing and doing things that you may never see or do in other career fields.
If you have the tools to be something that helps somebody, that makes something better for someone else, then you're doing it right.
One of the things that we like to say is that sometimes we're the best thing of somebody's worst day.
You are the best part of somebody's worst day.
Many EMTs encourage others to join the field.
I think it's important to encourage others to become EMTs. If we don't get out there and encourage other people to do it, we are not going to have the people we need to help our society.
I would absolutely recommend it, even if it's something that you just catch in the spur of the moment and say, hey, I want to go try this out.
But without us going out there and encouraging people that have the skills, that have the ability, that have the willingness to do it, we're not going to have the support, we're not going to have the infrastructure, we're not going to have the people that we need to provide this, what is an essential service.
Doing EMS is one of those ways that I find fulfillment in my life and feel like I can be productive and valuable.
This is an absolute practical application of that concept and making the world a better place by making the place around you better.